I'm going to go right back, first of all, to the time that you had this car accident.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where you just felt God was calling you to go full-time in music. Just take us back to that moment.
Yeah, my wife Anna and I had been married a year, and we were working at a conference up in Lincoln, and we drove through the night. It's the sort of stupid thing you do when you're younger, isn't it? And yeah, I had a car crash very near our home. So it was pretty life-threatening. I broke my leg and I was in hospital for 2 weeks. So it was one of those defining moments, I felt like God had given me my life back. So in those moments, you do make quite big decisions. And so I gathered all the guys together. We were running an event called Cutting Edge at the time. And I was like, come on, let's do this. Let's dive in the deep end, leave our jobs and do the music thing full time. And that was the beginning of Delirious.
If you'd known, did you have any idea back then how huge it would be, the touring around the world, the sort of anthems that everyone around the world sings? If you'd known back then how big it would be, what would you sort of said to yourself?
Well, you probably wouldn't do it, would you? It'd drive you mad, wouldn't it? And that's the great thing with God, is that He gives you a little bit at a time, and you grow into it, and He gives you the grace to cope with how it grows and your family, and so it was a steady incline. But yeah, grateful looking back. I mean, it's been an amazing life, and amazing to sort of serve God in that way and see this music touch people's lives. It's been great.
What were some of the standout moments for you as a band, with some of the places you performed particularly?
Well, our music always seemed to sound great outdoors. So I used to love those open air festivals. I remember we played in India once, in Hyderabad, and there was so many people I couldn't see the back of the crowd, and that was a memorable moment. Obviously, some of the Luis Palau crusades were memorable. We did so many things, throughout that 17 years. We went to all the crazy countries, and it's just been an amazing journey.
I asked Michael W. Smith last week, do you ever get tired of people coming up to you and telling you about the impact a certain song had on their life? And he said about a lady that actually her life was saved. She was in a car about to kill herself.
Wow.
As she listened to Place in This World. Do you have any stories like that? People come up to you and tell you about History Maker or a song that's really impacted them? Yeah,
you do hear stories like that. It's very humbling. And you never know who's going to be in the crowd. And I say to my guys in my team, some nights it could be 20 people in a club, and another night it could be 100,000 people in Kiev. You never know who's out there, and so it's like, let's always go for it. Let's always pour ourselves out. And I was with someone last weekend who was 13 years old, standing in the crowd in Kiev. And sort of 15 years later, I'm having breakfast with this lady, and she's telling me about her life and how she found Jesus, and has done all these incredible things with her life. So I find that very humbling.
How does it feel having so many of the songs that you've written, that you've recorded, like just songs that people all around the world sing?
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? The idea that you can write something in your own space at home in private, and you're doing the best you can within your own ability to write a song, and then people start singing it, and it's a very strange idea, but it's wondrous, and I'm very grateful that people love those songs.
I've watched the final concert you did with Delirious. It looked like an incredibly emotional night. What was it like for you, and what was that transition from going solo from that point?
Yeah, it was a very emotional night. I think we were at London, was it Hammersmith, wasn't it? And all our wives and kids were with us. And I remember at the end we brought everybody on. I don't think there was anybody that wasn't crying. It was a long run. There aren't many bands that stay together longer than 3 or 4 years. And it was a 17-year run, and we were so highly invested in it, and we were very grateful to be in one piece at the end of it. And God was very kind to us, and He blessed it. And you know, my kids live in the fruit of that, and they're now inspired by that and making their own music. It's great.
I remember the first time I met you, you just performed a massive concert in Athens at the Olympics. And then I bumped into you the next day at UCB. You had your baseball cap on, feeding your kids breakfast. Tell us about that transition from these huge festivals to then coming back home after these big tours. What's that like?
Well, it's something you just have to learn to do, because, you know, they're my kids. I mean, they're not anyone else's kids, so I've got to look after them. I'm their dad, and so you have to develop a mechanism of switching between the different worlds you're in, you know, as anyone would do, as a football player would do, or you know, you just have to learn how to do that very, very quickly, unless you want to sort of have that disconnect with your kids. So I, with the help of my wife, who's incredibly down to earth and incredibly grounded, she's a great mum, we've sort of managed to sort of bumble along, and you know, we love our kids very much.
It's hard enough when you've got 2 kids. You've got 6, I think?
Yes, we do, yeah.
So how do you manage that with all your busy life?
We have a van, and that's about it. We have a 9-seater van, and that's how we get everybody around. But you know, one of them's married now, another one's left home. So we are getting a smaller now, believe it or not. We're down to 4 now. But it's been such a great experience having so many children, very challenging and exhausting, but really rewarding.
Take us back to your own spiritual journey, how you came to know Christ, and a bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, I was brought up in a Christian home, and my parents are great people. It probably wasn't the most charismatic or Holy Spirit orientated church, but you know, that's what it was. And it was only when I left home at the age of 17 that I had discovered kind of a little bit more about the Holy Spirit and grace, and you know, the sense that there are no limits with God, that this wasn't just a functional relationship, this was a heart relationship, and the idea that God could be my friend. I was hugely attracted to that. And so, you know, I've given my life to local church and helping, you know, serve that, and you know, it's in our family DNA now. And so yeah, I got filled with the Holy Spirit when I was 19, and it was at that point that I started writing songs, which I guess you would call worship songs that we sing in church. I didn't know what they were then, but first song was called Lord You Have My Heart, and I was 19.
Wow. What were your earliest musical influences? What inspired you then?
Well, I grew up sort of in the U2 era, you know, with Joshua Tree and Acton Baby. Those sort of records were hugely inspiring, and you know, everyone wanted to be Bono, didn't they? So I remember for us guys, you know, it was Radiohead, Manic Street Preachers, it was U2, and you know, we wanted to aspire to being as good as those guys. You know, we lived in England. There wasn't a massive Christian music scene, and so we wanted to have our record alongside those records at HMV. And we just thought, well, why not? Let's just do that.
Tell us about Compassion Art, how you started that and how that's going.
Yeah, back in 2007, Delirious did a tour to India, and we were hugely impacted by that. I was really moved by the extreme poverty in some of the situations we went to. We went to one of the red light districts in Mumbai, and I met these beautiful people that were running a project for the mothers and their children, about 70 kids, and one of them caught my attention, a little girl called Farine. She was 12 at the time. Cut a long story short, we were so moved by the plight of this little girl, and her future was so desolate, that we looked into bringing her back to England to join our family. It didn't work out, but her story is fantastic. She's gone on and she's been thriving, been through school and college, and so that's great. But it moved us to gather all our songwriter friends, all our artists from around the world, people like Michael W., Joel Houston and Tim Hughes and Matt Redman and Paul Baloche and Darlene Check, people like that. Let's get together for a week, write some songs, and we will give these songs away. So we won't own them ourselves traditionally, but we will put them in a charitable trust, and all those royalties will come to that trust, and we'll distribute that to projects that are on our heart. So it was hugely rewarding, and I'm sure something like that will come again.
Tell us about future plans for yourself. I know you've got a new album out. It's been recorded all around the world. What's your plans?
Yeah, I've got a new record out called Love Song for a City. It's a live record recorded all around the world over the last 18 months. So it picks some of the favourite older moments mixed in with some brand new songs. And so that's out now. And next week I go back in the studio to record a studio record. And we're recording that in Portland, Oregon, with a great producer and a great friend of mine called Gabriel Wilson. So that's going to be the next thing.
Two more questions quickly. When you didn't have the band, when you were going solo, was that a challenge at first to sort of go out on your own?
Yeah, I think after the end of Delirious, of course, nothing can compete with the size and the impact of something like Delirious. So it would have been foolish of me to sort of try and kick straight back into something big. And I think I just took it really slow. I came off the road for a year. I really enjoyed being at home. Felt rejuvenated. I started writing songs again. God's Great Dance Floor was one of those, Waiting Here for You, Song of Solomon. And bit by bit, I feel like, that wind that was blowing behind the Delirious thing, I'm sort of catching a bit of that again. I've got a great team, and you just have to do what's set before you, don't you? You can't push. You just have to be content and be grateful that you can still sing and play music, whether it's, as I say, 10 people, 20 people, or many thousands. You have to be grateful in the moment, and I am grateful, and I'm just in a great space where I can go and serve people, do whatever I'm supposed to be doing.
And just finally, your association with the Palau ministry. How do you feel about Luis Palau's health and that legacy he's left here in the UK?
Well, I remember going to Spring Harvest years ago as a kid. Luis Palau would be one of those speakers, and some of the missions he did in the UK. And then, of course, as a band, we would travel to America and be a part of the Luis Palau Crusades. So, I remember this beautiful old man that was just so kind to us, so inspiring. So it is sad to hear about Luis's health, and of course we're praying with everyone for him. And hopefully, weeks like this, doing these things in the UK will be, sort of for him as well, for his legacy, that it carries on, that we're carrying on the Palau thing. And, it's obviously sad for the family, but I can imagine that God is very proud.